This is going to be another episode of Snake and Banter, and our guest for this one is a first-time guest, but I have actually had him on my channel before. It is obviously Walle. That's right, I'm the only person who's not Swedish who says it correctly. It's not Wally, it's not Wally or whatever. And yes, he did do a sensational 1v5, but it's Walle. You're supposed to say that. Obviously, Dennis Ellenberg, if people don't know, of the old CS 1.6 movies, look those up. If you've ever seen them, by the way, you love 1.6, they will be the best movies you've ever watched. So if you're not an old school fan, worth watching. And also, he is doing the thing where he is gradually sort of ingratiating himself to the industry again. If you don't know, he came back a couple of years ago when I did my reflections with him and started working with Elite Clan, which is a Swedish one as far as I know, some sort of Nordic team. And then more recently, he's been doing work with Johnny Speeds, which is obviously that Swedish team of Draken, etc., that was kind of at one point in time like on the brink of getting into some events and maybe getting to a bigger team. And also, if people don't know, Walle, because we didn't actually talk about this that much in our interview because it was mainly just about CS and 1.6, you also have a background where in the meantime, since you were in esports, you went away and had a whole career basically in the fashion industry. And I mean in all senses, like production, actually designing things. In fact, you've designed some things yourself with some of the other teams out there. The NIP, I think maybe you did something with, I can't remember who it was. So can you give us a little background? What are you doing in esports at the moment?
Happy to be on the show. I always watch and listen to the episodes, so I'm happy to be on it as well. It's the best shows out there, to be honest. It's the ones that I listen to. This one and obviously Hot Take.
Oh, sure,
with
the
Kasad.
Yes,
that's the number one show for sure.
Okay.
No, I love it. It's my guilty pleasure to when I need to wind down. I just put it on and then I go. And it's good to be here. And like you said, when I was away from esports, I was in. I never tried to say that I'm no fashion guru in any sense. So that's not what I did. But after esports, I started my own business, and it happened to be in fashion retail.
Right.
And the reason that I ended up doing it is because I realized that you could compete in business as well.
Right.
So I went from competing in esports.
Oh, it scratches the same itch for you. Is that what you mean?
Yes,
right.
It did.
Right.
Because I ended up in sales and immediately wanted to be the best because there was a big hole missing for me from esports where I always had that, drive.
If people don't know, Walle was like a top player for like a solid half a decade or more. Like he was always in these teams that were in the semis of the majors and competing for every trophy, etc.
Yeah, maybe 6 or 7 years total, like at the top level.
Yeah.
And then a few years, getting there, etc.
Yes.
But I found out that sales scratched the same competitive itch, and I ended up starting my own business in fashion retail, and I had nine stores all over Sweden.
Okay, all right, fucking hell.
With fashion brick and mortar stores.
Right.
We had around 50 employees. So for me, it was one way to satisfy my competitive side, just trying to be the best at something else. And it doesn't really matter to me what it is. It's what I found out about myself, that as long as I can compete with someone, maybe it's just myself too, I'm gonna be. That's what suits me. After the pandemic, owning brick and mortar stores was quite possibly like the worst thing.
Worst investment, right? Sure.
It was so terrible.
I can imagine.
I mean, the experience from going through the pandemic as a store owner, it's also, I'm not an emotional guy, but it's been a really tough experience.
I can imagine it's depressing,
Yeah, it was super tough, and it has also given me a lot of experience, good and bad, because it was such a tough experience too. And after that was the first time in 10 years where I could really what do I want to do next? And the only thing that popped up in my head was I want to go back to esports and do something with the experience that I have now. So right now I'm actually working for Zowie part-time. That's one of the things I do. I have 2 esports teams, and I work with a Swedish matchmaking platform. So I'm used to running my own business. So I have like 4 or 5 different jobs now.
Okay.
And currently, one of the big focus for me is Johnny Speeds, trying to do this tier 3 journey.
I mean, the obvious reason is you're doing it for kind of almost a patriotic reason because they're Swedish. You want them to be good again, right? Someone to be relevant from Sweden.
Yeah, because I was part of that era as well.
Yeah,
and of course, there's always commercial reasons too, because if no one else is doing it, there's gonna be value in succeeding by doing it. So if Johnny Speeds would be the team to do it, it would also make sense for commercial reasons. So that's like the big focus right now we have. I'm actually trying to run an esports organization.
Okay.
So that's fun. It's a lot of fun, and I really enjoy being back in esports. With all its good and bad.
What's the thing, Valle? We can tell you obviously enjoy challenges, because think of those 3 things you've just said. You tried to run a brick and mortar fashion store during the pandemic. You're trying to actually have your own esports org. And then thirdly, you're trying to get a Swedish CS team to the top, mate. These are all mission impossible right now, mate. No one can do
And I used to do the esport career as well. Yeah.
Right, sure.
I like a challenge for sure.
Oh, by the way, I'll just put this out there, because you know what? Every now and then, maybe I should flex, says the guy who flexes every chance he ever can. But basically, I've always said, right, I'm actually too kind to all these plebs, because I'll like argue with a pleb on a detail, right? And then I just have to realise sometimes, Valle, like, wait a minute, why am I arguing with some kid who was like 3 when Forrest played about how good Forrest was? Yeah. I was stood behind Forrest watching his fucking PC while he did it. Like, you just remember it from a frag movie. So similarly, before every pleb tries to tell me who Valle is, I used to fucking room with the guy. Put it this way, Valle. I have a very good memory, mate. To this day, I haven't erased that fucking insanely obnoxious dubstep track you had as your fucking alarm. And if people don't know, Valle's the guy where he doesn't fucking wake up when his alarm goes off. He has like 5 alarms go off first that gradually bring him out of being asleep. But if you're in the same room, you just hear that sound like, oh, fucking, then it doesn't get turned off straight away. It goes on again. Oh, you had some mega obnoxious track at the end, really, like because you had like some shit to wake you up for real, like some like fucking hardcore. Like it sounded like that fucking, like track that like Skrillex did with In Flames. It was like that sort of shit, if you remember.
Yeah, probably something like that. Yeah, at different times. I think at one point I was actually quite obnoxious as a person too, or as a player.
Enough. Okay.
I think all of us go through this, and some people maybe get better with time. Okay. Some people don't.
Some people, yeah.
Yeah.
We'll leave that open-ended so the fans can decide in the comments how that applies to each of the 3 of us. Personally, I've never been obnoxious. I've always kept it, clean, legit, calm, demure. Anyway, let's start the episode. So, Valle, we always let the guests start first. What is good in CS at the moment? What are you enjoying?
Okay, so what's good in CS right now? For me, where I'm coming from, obviously I watch a lot of CS and I enjoy following Tier 1, but what I think is really good right now is the fact that LANs are back. That's what's good about CS for me, and it makes the ecosystem better. So it's a positive effect of the VRS system, because obviously we know that it has plenty of flaws. There's no denying it, that it's hard to break into the VRS, and there are flaws to it. But seeing that the VRS has also done some really positive things in terms of bringing back LAN, bringing back better teams on LAN, and just making this ecosystem better, I think that's really good, and something that I wasn't expecting to see, this type of return of LAN that was such a big part of when I was coming up as well. And I think there are several layers to it too.
Yeah, go for it.
Where it's gonna obviously be better for the LANs and the TOs, the smaller ones, because it makes their product better, more relevant. And
we're talking about the notion that like a smaller LAN isn't just a LAN, so it has points that count towards like the circuit. That's kind of the point you're making here.
Exactly. That's one of the layers to a positive effect from the VRS system. That I don't know if they realized it when they made it. Probably I would think that they didn't. But
Right.
if you're a small TO or a small LAN somewhere in a smaller country like Sweden or the Nordics, Denmark, suddenly you have more eyes on you and you have the bigger teams coming, and your tournament can become more attractive for commercial purposes too. So that's why I think it improves the entire ecosystem. So that's super good to see. I mean, I think we see more local LANs popping up just for the sole reason that we're actually going to see teams like NIP go to these LANs.
Okay.
Which is crazy. I think none of us were expecting to see this type of turnout for the LANs.
Sure.
And on the other hand, I think for the esports teams as well, bringing LAN into the equation more and maybe earlier for teams, it's going to be a valuable experience for the players, because I can only go to myself, back in the day, you hadn't really made it as a player or proved your value until you had been on LAN. And from what I can tell, the current ecosystem in esports, you can stay online for a long time.
Sure.
In modern CS.
Yeah.
And actually make it quite far. It wasn't possible back in the day. So I think this is good for the players and for the teams, that you might be able to get the LAN experience faster this way. In up-and-coming teams, up-and-coming players, they're going to get to LAN, build up that experience, playing on another setup, playing in important matches, and just, also getting the team chemistry. So I think there's a social aspect of this as well for the players, because most of them are coming from, maybe they never really had a proper job as well. So it's going to be developing their social skills, team chemistry, their ability to perform under pressure in important matches. I think it's a little bit underestimated how much positive this is going to do for the players as well. Just making it to LAN and getting that experience as soon as possible, so you don't have the big bet on a player, and then when they're supposed to go to LAN, it's going to be a totally different experience in their gameplay, or it's going to be such a big social step for them that it's going to be tough. So I think it's a way of transitioning in a better way.
Right.
I can only take our player in Johnny Speeds as an example. We have Male09. He turned 16 today.
Wow. Okay.
But just for him he already performed online. Online, he's already a good player.
Right.
But the next step for him is actually doing it again on LAN, and also being able to transfer his online persona into a team environment that works on LAN as well. And I think this is something that esports, us gamers, we need to go through this journey. And back in the day, we did it naturally, because you always had to go to LAN, and you always were doing these small LANs with your friends. And so I'm really happy to see that LANs are back, and it's a super positive for me, both for the ecosystem, the TOs, but also for the players actually, getting forced to be on LAN, but that's part of the experience too.
I'm glad that there's implications to a lot of the LANs that are in the space, kind of regardless of if they're an S tier LAN or not. I think that's kind of where I would even spin this, is just that the fact that the VRS system has allowed for locals to have some sort of weight, thinking back to just even how NIP has come up with Fragadelphia, but then other people that went to that Fragadelphia, who are local North American players, also get an opportunity to see some of the better players in the world play against them, or just and then get to feel that. I feel like it's Counter-Strike can be a weird hobby for a lot of people for quite some time on Face It, but getting to go to something local like that if they're in the nearby area and then to be able to participate is, I feel like, where you get really sucked in. I feel like if you just only experience the game virtually, it can be one of your favorite aspects to, it can be one of your favorite hobbies, but when you become so much more impassioned once you actually see it in person, I feel like, just even to relate this back to myself, like, I mean, back in the mid 2000s, I was attending, like, I was just like 12, 13, but I was going to LANs in California and even watching CGS or it was CGI actually back then, so feeling it as a viewer, but then also competing in like the local stuff here and there. That's where like I was like, okay, this is very real very early on. And if I didn't have those kinds of experiences and locals weren't happening, then I don't know, maybe I just would have done something. Like I would have still played Counter-Strike online, but I don't know if I would have gotten as invested into it as I ever did. So yeah, it's a good point. It it draws everybody into it in the community sense.
Yeah, but go on.
It's hard to grasp the tier 1 aspect when you can't experience it. So that's like the challenge when you're coming up. Where do you start and where do you start getting that experience? And that's also a really cool point, what NIP did for Fragadelphia. If it hadn't been for that one run at a local LAN, whereas you said also the other teams could experience a professional team coming to this event, playing them, how they behave, what their chemistry is. I think those are the type of things that are gonna inspire you. And also it could be, for some players, it's gonna be like a make or break moment too. Like, this is what I wanna do. And some players are actually gonna realize, this is not my cup of tea when you get to the LAN, and you have to socialize with your team in a totally different way than you do online. And that's why I think this is a good first step that is happening, where they can get the practice in early.
Yeah, I'll take that same point, because I was actually going to reference that as the example if Maui didn't, the exact one, that NIP. I'll tell you right now, the only reason they attended that event is because it had VRS points, and at the time their squad hadn't yet done enough online to get invites to LAN, so they wanted to go to any LAN they could that had VRS points, and obviously in this case they were very heavily favoured to win. So even though it might just look like it's almost an exhibition tournament for them, first of all, it gives them actually a way to go and earn the points, not just playing online against people who wouldn't. The joke is, the people who beat NIP online, if they themselves got the invite to the LAN, they wouldn't do it at LAN. So that almost feels like a weird thing that you have to qualify through online. One thing people do actually underestimate is the one positive of the pandemic was it recreated online CS. If people don't know, in Valle's career, that wasn't even a thing. You only played online at the very beginning before you were pro, or at the end, they had just that weird IEM qualification system, which even then, by the way, luckily there wasn't that many top teams. So like, unless you got really unlucky against like the third best Danish team, or famously the Germans read the rule book and had some weird angle, you'd usually qualify anyway. It wasn't like you die and don't make it to the LAN. Most teams made it to the finals. But back then, online CS was just for amateurs, essentially. It wasn't even a semi-pro thing. Semi-pros had loads of national LANs they could go to, and they were usually in like the second tier LAN events, etc. So one thing, the good news is, actually, at least if you aren't at the LANs, there are online tournaments, and you can play these CCTs where you're playing real LAN teams and getting like a bit of online experience. But I agree, the problem you had was the last few years, there was just only the online CS like that, and then tier 1 LAN CS, and the jump between those two 2, as you're pointing out, is too huge. Like, the all-time great players are going to make the jump, although, by the way, even then, not always on the first time. But the worst one is the player that's in between, like you're saying, the one that's still developing. Yeah. How's he supposed to go from, like, an online game against Nemiga against, like, right, you're the lowest seed, so in the first LAN game of your life, you're playing Vitality. It's like, good luck. Like, that's what you call in English throwing them in the deep end. They're going to drown, mate. That's too much. What you want is like this. Perfect if they can go to Fragadelphia or something and get a bit of experience. Exactly. By the way, you also nailed it too. It's not just the team that gets it. Like, I'll tell you who actually gained the most from Fragadelphia, Maui. What's funny is it's NRG.
The TO,
because if NRG had won the event, right? Oh, TO, of course, yes. But if NRG had won this event, there's no good teams there, so everyone would go, who cares? Even though they lost to NIP, they almost beat them. That's actually like a pretty good result for them, mate. That makes you think, hey, maybe there's something to NRG. Like, these are real players in an IP squad. Like, already that gives an extra value to the narratives of that event that wouldn't have existed. Like, I wouldn't even be aware who won that event if NIP didn't go. I wouldn't give a fuck. I'd just think, who cares? It's tier 3 LAN, innit? And then also, I do think in general, people don't realise when we're in Counter-Strike the value that we have such a massive tier 1 LAN circuit. I follow other esports games. One enormously is League of Legends, right? I can tell you League of Legends is a nightmare to analyse because it is like football. It's like months of league play, and that is ass to watch. Like, that doesn't hype you. And even worse, it makes trying to figure out who's good really hard because you're doing things like you can be the best for 3 months, but if when the playoffs come, you're not, it's forgotten that you were ever good. In a LAN, in the CS circuit, that would be like I would win 2 LANs and then fall off at the major or something. But at least then you'd know like what I did in the season. It would matter. Every few weeks you have the exciting playoff bracket. It's dope. It's why I'm not surprised. Put it this way, here's a key difference. In other esports games, Valle, most people who are retired just go off and never come back. In CS, it's the only game I know where nearly all the old school players I know every now and then watch an event, because the difference is you can just tune in every month. There's no pressure. You can just look on it. Oh, right, there's a weekend. This weekend the finals are on. I'll watch the semis or something. Like, it's so easy to dip back in compared to if it was like some crazy, league format, or you had to know the domestic scene or something.
It's a crazy circuit. I mean, it's totally insane, the circuit that is in CS right now. And that's, coming from 1.6.
Yeah.
The circuit right now, it's insane. I would have loved to be a player in this circuit, playing. But I know that young people today maybe are not built with the same mindset.
Okay.
I would just go back to back to back to back.
You'd go to all the lands, basically.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure.
True.
It's totally correct. And I think that's one of the cool things about modern esports is that you can make it quite far online today. So I've actually been saying that somehow for me it seems easier to make it today. But making it online doesn't mean you're going to be a good player offline, unfortunately. So this is going to help players on their development faster. So I think that's going to be a really big key difference, because back in our day, you had to be on like minimum 5 LANs before anyone would even acknowledge that, okay, this guy is not cheating. That was like the 5 LAN mark. Then you're not a cheater anymore. And it wasn't possible to make it through online play back in the day.
Yeah, by the way, that does make me laugh, because in the modern day, the top teams are all like, we need to skip some events. Mate, if you showed the old school pros, like there's another LAN in 3 weeks, so you get like 100k for first, they'd sign up to every single one. What are you talking about? God. That was like that's like 5 times what you make in a year back in the day.
Yeah, it's totally true. And that's how I also would resonate around this,
Right.
Do you mean that we're going to skip the chance to win like 100k?
Exactly.
Because we're tired? I think we can rest later.
Yeah, exactly. We'll wait till we start. Yeah, then we'll rest. Yeah. Don't worry, when we're crap, we'll rest. Don't worry.
Exactly. But it's got to be hard for the teams to revitalize them every time, coming up with a new way to play.
Okay.
Just having back-to-back events. But the circuit is insane. I love it.
I do like as well that this episode, just because of the weird lighting of Valle, it looks like he's like the withered King Theoden in Lord of the Rings, and Maui's like Grimmer Wormtongue, like master. I don't know who I am, like one of the Knights of Rohan or something in that analogy. I made myself the hero of the casting there. It's all good. I'm that baller guy who rode back at the end and sort of saved the day. Can't remember his name. That's what a great fan of Lord of the Rings I am. Right, let's move on. Maui, what is your good point?
My good point is just that with the major coming so soon, and with just the slow updates that Counter-Strike has pushed out, the game itself, as of I'd say a few weeks ago, I think it's about 2 weeks ago, they made a slight change to how the spray feels, which was actually done because a Reddit user wrote.
This is really because of that thread that was about why the spray is inaccurate. That's for real the impetus.
Yeah, I'm like 99%.
Holy shit!
Yeah, I think
because of the timing, you mean?
Did they even thank him?
Oh, possible. I mean, to be fair, they do say they read Reddit, and that was like a pretty in-depth thread. I'll give them credit. Like they went pretty deep on it.
Yeah. It was why the spray feels off
Wow.
in CS2 thread. I'm pretty sure by Powerful Seesaw 8927. Yeah, this
perfect username for Reddit there as well.
I know.
Because it sounds like a bot-generated name, doesn't it? Like,
I'm pretty sure this guy's testing. I don't think I'm mistaken on this one. Yeah, I think that this one, this is the post that actually got Valve to look at why the spray feels bad, and then it feels better. Like, I mean, you could get into all the details if you want on this whole thread. I'm not really about to sum this whole thing up, but basically, I just know this. I know before this update and after this update, it kind of just felt like spraying felt laggy. That's how I would explain it. And it was always, and in the beginning when people like Elige and, the top players were able to still hit nasty spray transfers, like they were able to do it despite this. Like it was possible to do this. You could still work on your sprays. I think anybody that put in hundreds or thousands of hours in CS2 realized like you can kind of fight it, but it still always felt off. And I couldn't really put my finger on exactly what was the problem. I just assumed that it was more like it felt like it was spraying at 64 tick versus 128 tick. And I know a lot of people, especially those that watch that 3 Clicks Phillips video that was like done fucking like 10 years ago, they're gonna be like, oh, what? People can't even tell the difference between 64 and 128. It's like, no, if you actually played this game for 3,000 hours and you actually can. Yeah, you definitely can, especially with movement. I think still with movement, there are
like, put it this way, we're not even saying this just as like bravado. If me and you took like obvious people like Robs and MonolZ and blindfolded them, I mean, that wouldn't work because you'd have to. I mean, if there was a way to make them not know what version of the game it was, like essentially made them blind to what patch it was, they would pass the taste. They would pass the Pepsi Challenge taste test, Maui. I'm certain of it.
Robs passed the challenge already.
Yeah, they did.
Take right.
Who did it with him?
I think he says Robs. I think he's right. I think Robs did do something like this where he actually tested it and was able to tell. Yeah.
There was a YouTube video. I forgot who did the video itself. I think it might have been NATO Safix, actually. I think NATO Safix might have done a test with Robs. And Robs
anyway, you are right. That is a really antiquated opinion. Like that maybe was true 10 years ago, but it's not true today.
Yeah. And so it kind of, to me, felt like the spraying in CS2 just felt like 64 tick, and I always just attributed it to that. And I was like, okay, I have to learn to spray on 64 tick instead of the smoothness of 128 tick. And either way, as of now, it just feels like when I spray in this game, it feels like every bullet comes out with the sound that it's supposed to. It seems like the speed is at the right kind of tempo. I'm not sure about all the details or anything like that. Either way, all I know is I play game, it feel good. This Redditor helped. And I think that this is actually very beneficial to people that are going to watch the major. They're going to want to play Counter-Strike. And then they're going to realize, because one of the things that drew all of us into Counter-Strike is that the mechanics are pretty damn good. It's like one of the best aspects of CS is that it's so much more crisp than some of the other shooters.
Especially the Valorants of the world. Yeah, of course.
Like the CODs of the world, like you go from those kind of games and it's night and day. You're like, oh my God, games are supposed to feel like this, where it feels like every single kill is completely earned. There's no BS. You learn the mechanics of the spray, can't move and shoot, all of that crap. Technically, you can move and shoot in this game. People do it way more than they do in other games, but that's a discussion for another day. And either way, I just think that it's not even quality of life. It's like gameplay mechanic improvements coming out right before the major are so good, because there's going to be more new players in this like 1 month window than there are for practically any other point of the year other than the other major. Like we basically have 2 months a year where people are actually going to try CS, because the only advertising they essentially do is tournaments via their esports, and the major is the biggest event of the year. So this is a perfect time for them to have released this, and I can't believe it. I'm actually just thanking this Redditor. So good job, Powerful Seesaw. Well done.
What do you think, Valle? By the way, already an alien concept compared to your day. The idea, like, a fan could post an opinion, the dev might read it. Valve didn't even fucking do anything with CS back when we were around. And then they might even change the game. That's even mind-blowing to me. That could be real.
Yeah, for sure. And I actually don't have much reference points for, like, how the mechanics feel, because I never played any other games. But I'm happy to hear that all other games are trash, of course. CS for life.
Sure.
But proper spray has always been that's something that Counter-Strike has always had. And I know that a lot of people have been complaining about the switch from CSGO to CS2. So, I mean, as a enjoyer of CS, you got to be really happy with the people actually getting what they want, because this has been the topic for so long since CS2 came out, that the spray, among other things, has been feeling so off for so many people. And I just love the fact that today we have people who are actually deep diving in this type of way to find the solutions to these things. I mean, it's just fascinating to have such a engaged, like, hardcore community people that are willing to do this. And I think this happens a lot in CS, where people are doing I know Maui is picking some of this stuff up, where they are comparing how players are just based on the stats. Like, what was the stat that Cadian was the worst MP9 player?
Oh, right. Yes.
We have people diving into this
true.
stuff.
Before that would just be an opinion. We didn't have the data before, right? Yes.
It's just amazing. And no, we didn't have this at all back in the day. You know, if something was off, if there was nothing to do about it.
Yes.
Back in the day, you couldn't really complain to anyone. If there was a bug, you know, it was just fair use. It's the same for everyone. So, I mean, it's good to see that. I think this is going to be important, probably going forward, that it got so much exposure, this guy who found the reason why. And it was actually picked up and fixed by Valve. So I think that's a big win for the community and everyone who are really trying to help them find out why isn't it as good as we want it to be.
By the way, I'll also give props to Valve. Rare time, just enjoy it. It only happens once in a blue moon. Then again, you won't deserve it that often, right? I will give Valve props in this sense. They weren't like this even in CSGO, I can tell you. Like, I won't say who, because they haven't told me they want me to reveal their name, but there is literally a Hall of Fame player in CSGO who wrote a really detailed email, somewhat akin to like this post here, to explain a lot of the problems on even almost a game development angle where you understood things about the engine and stuff. And he wrote this email, Maui, and he was just completely ghosted, and it's worse than that. I've told this story before. When he came on the next day, like a fucking meme, some of the Valve devs had even like removed him off their Steam client. Like, they were offended that he'd written them an email, which is like, who the fuck are you, mate? You're just the guy who goes, I sort of made CS, even though by the way, you weren't even fucking there when Min Lee did it like 25 years ago. You were probably in your dad's balls at the time, some of you guys, or you were 7 years old or something. I was right there waiting for Valid, come along 4 years later. Check it out, bitch, whatever. Sure. Anyway, but the point is, I agree, back then you couldn't, like, put it this way, back then the complaint wasn't, Valve doesn't listen to it. It's like, we don't even know how to contact Valve, man. Like, no one even knows who Valve is back then. It's just like that. That's no like one to contact. No, I would even say back then in CS, the analogy is, do you know the concept? Maybe people don't know this in the modern day. Back in the day, before there was atheism and the idea there is no God, there used to be two schools of thinking about God. One is called theism, which is the idea you know who God is. It's Jehovah or Allah or whatever, and he hears his message. The other one was called deism, and it's the idea that all God did is he's a guy that no one knows or can contact. He's just the guy at the beginning of the universe who sort of pressed the go button and then left. Like, he just went after that, right? Deism is what we used to have with Valve. They just made the game way earlier, sometimes 10 years earlier, and some of us haven't heard from them since. They're like the dad that went for cigarettes at 2 a.m. and never came back. That's how we used to feel, Bowie.
And we didn't have any updates,
No, of course not.
The updates from Valve.
I always joke to people, like, the era when Valle came up, it wasn't even called CS 1.6, but the joke is, the reason it's called 1.6 as a game is that one update essentially just lasted like 10 years or something crazy. That in theory, it should have kept going 1.7, it never did, they just left it though. It's true.
Sometimes I'm thinking back about, when I see how they fixed. One key thing I think is going to be that it seems like the community feedback is moving in the right direction.
Yeah,
so
great.
I think that's a big win.
Yeah.
And now they have this big win that is also had a lot of public exposure. I think it's going to have positive ripple effects.
Yeah.
Probably people are going to make the effort to try to help. But no, what I think about sometimes is, in CS2 they fixed the smoke. And in CSGO, it was broken. You had the one-way smokes. Do you remember the smoke in CS 1.6?
It was the worst. Yeah, it was terrible.
It was the worst ever. There was like no point in even using it because you could see it was like see-through the smoke.
Yes.
So that's sometimes when I, the CS2 smoke is pretty good today compared to what we were playing like on a tier 1 level.
No, I'll also say as well, this is another example, by the way, a bit like that whole complaint, Maui, where everyone complains in CS2, like, you can't hold angles, like, spoiler, it was the same going from CS 1.6 to CSGO, you couldn't hold angles there. I always say to people, this ties into the spray example, the biggest difference, if you want to see the difference between CSGO and CS2 and CS 1.6, I'll tell you the exact position in the game that you've all played and how different it is. So in CSGO or CS2, if you play the Inferno small site, the small B site, and you play that area that in CSGO and CS2 is called the spools, with those spools of electric thing, and you stand up there, right? In 1.6, that's a really famous spot to stand. In 1.6, if they rush you with 5 Glocks, you, the one player there, are about to get all 5 kills and have an ace. That's about to be your shit. By the way, your shit frag move be opening. The difference is Valor's frag move, we wouldn't have had that. Like, he wouldn't have had, but if you're like the noob who just wants to have a 5k, you will have that one, right? In CSGO, I always used to say, the best player in the world won't even usually get the 5 eco kills there, because in CS, like, the spray is just not the same in CSGO, and it definitely isn't in CS2, by the way. I'm with you, Maui. The biggest mistake people make when they compare things as a general trend is they pick all the outliers. Like, this would be like if I said at the beginning of CS2, what are you talking about? The AWP's fine. Zemo and MongoLZ are killing it. It's like, yeah, but the joke is, like, even the 7th best AWP was half as good. Same thing with Spray. You can't turn to me and go, but Thorin, look how Donk and Alicia spring. Like, mate, they're like gods of Spray. What are you doing? It'd be the other way around. If they couldn't do it, there wouldn't even be Spray in the game. The premise goes, and I'm with you, by the way. By the way, that's why that Donk clip on Nuke is completely goated. That's before the update. That clip is inhuman, mate. Like, but I agree. It wasn't good enough, in my opinion, in CS2. I didn't even think in CSGO it was still not that powerful, actually. It was only when weapons like the Krieg and the Augur were on that everyone full auto sprayed. Because if people don't know, this is one thing about 1.6 that's actually misunderstood. People think it was all spraying. No, the beauty of 1.6 is I actually think it had the most even distribution of all firing styles. So you had full auto spray. By the way, the only reason that even became super famous was people like Heaton. They were like the most famous players to do that style, but not everyone did it. Like, if you don't know, Heaton's partner in crime Potty would be like the burst player who does the 2 or 3 bullet bursts, and then later you had people like the Rambos of the world do the tapping, where you do the 1, 2, 3, like. The difference in CSGO is we had like the burst and stuff maybe early with Scream, then we went to something in the middle, and then eventually spray just wasn't even that big a thing. Again, except if the weapon itself just does spray anyway, like an MP9 or whatever. So I actually think that was a part of the game that was underrated. What I want it to be is I want it to be like mixed martial arts, where maybe you're a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guy, but there's not only Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, there's wrestling, there's Muay Thai fighting, there's kickboxing. I want everything to be available, and then we can all express our skill and how we want to play the game. So I think it's a positive. And also, I agree with what you said there, by the way. If anything, the very positive thing that comes out of this is the notion that because that guy didn't make a post like, wow, spraying sucks, Valve are all bombs and rip us off. No, what he did was almost do like a fucking white paper and submit it. Like, that's actually a good blueprint. If what this means, Maui, is I can go away and get a super nerd like a B-Trams guy, and he can get all the data and show something. Maybe we can actually like win the devs over, but without having to just bitch at them. I think that would be kind of cool. I vibe with that. I'm with you. It's a good point. Yeah. Right, okay, we'll go to my good point now. Right, my good point is going to be a more specific one. I'm thinking of it because of IEM Dallas and the fact the major's coming. One of the teams I feel like a lot of people have bailed on narratively. The two obvious teams is Aurora, the former Eternal Fire Turkish players, and then it's MongolZ. And it's the exact same reason for both teams, is that loads of times in the group stages, they look like they can be as good as any team out there. They can actually take the big teams to the limit and upset them. But the problem they both have is when you put them in the playoffs, you may as well bet your house on the other team. The amount of times they're just like half as good or their star players. And I actually think, even though everyone was out on MongolZ because they failed so many times, bro, this Dallas gave me so much fucking faith it can turn around, Maui. Like when I watched this one, I wish people, if you think MongolZ always choke, go watch this tournament because I'll tell you, here's how it went, right? In the actual group, when they played Vitality in, yes, the game without pressure, because it's the one we've already made the stage, mate, I actually think that might be the closest anyone's coming to beating Vitality, aside from that, like, one time Falcons was at 12-6 on Nuke. Like, that was a really close series. MongolZ could have won that one. Then you look, they beat Aurora fairly decently, and then they had a very close semi-final against mousesports too. Like, I think there's a world where this team could actually have been in the finals. So even though everyone's sort of bailed now, and they're all like, forget them, they're never going to make it, they're choked, I feel like actually coming into the major, this can be a dark horse. I think they're in a really good spot, MongolZ, mate. They look like they're sort of heated up and they're about ready to maybe explode. So I'm hyped. Well, any thoughts on the MongolZ, Valley? What do you think of this team?
Yeah, it's they are two very exciting teams to watch for sure, Aurora and MongolZ, and yeah, they've had some struggles when it really matters, like in the playoff games and stuff like this. But to me, it feels like they are so close that it's only a matter of time.
Right.
If they can stick with the plan and keep working on the mistakes that they are doing, they are so close that it's only a matter of time. I would actually think it would be too bad if they started changing players or stuff like that. I think that they should stick it out as it looks right now. And I know that maybe the narrative has been that we've been waiting for such a long time already for these teams to actually go all the way. But then again, they've been consistently, just below the top tier. So I really think that it's gonna be their time to win these games anytime now, and maybe it's only about adjusting those last small details in a game plan or getting together with tactic wise if they have some time to prepare. So I definitely think that we're gonna see a team like MongolZ. They're still such a fresh team. Imagine how much they have done coming from, I don't want to say nowhere, but...
No, but put it this way, think of your day, Valley. When people like the Chinese and the Koreans came, they didn't instantly be good. It took them a few years to grind up. Yeah, it took majors.
And they've established themselves at such a high level.
Yes.
And actually maybe found the ground floor on this level. So I think right now, I hope that's what they're putting their work into, trying to understand how are we going to take the next step. And I'm always a believer in trying to stick together.
Yes.
And, losing is also going to make you better as a unit and as a team. You actually have to go through the hard times to find the solutions and to become better. So I would definitely put my money on that we're gonna see them break through quite soon.
What do you think, Maui?
I feel like the MongolZ are in a weird position where it's clear that they're good enough at their peak to be I'd say top 4 at many events, but I think the reason that people are out on them is that they haven't really proven. It's weird that they've both proven that they are good enough to take maps off of the best teams in the world, but then they've also proven that they can lose to a lot of different teams.
Oh, sure.
And I think that puts you in a very poor position where, for example, the one event that really made me sell a little bit of my Mongol stock was the Blast Open Lisbon event. It was 2 months ago, to be fair to the Mongols, but when they lost a map to M80 there, but then they also lost to G2 and they lost to them 0-2 in the game that would have qualified them to go to the actual Lisbon Arena portion to the playoffs. And they lost to G2 in the group stage when it was, admittedly, MongoZ was still on the team there, and it was a full-strength G2, but the way they lost was just so bad, where it was just, they lost a really, really close match on their own Ancient, and then they just got blown out of the water completely on Dust 2. Like, they didn't even really get into the game. And just something about the way that they played and it's almost like the propensity to make mistakes from the individuals and to just die in untradeable ways away from everybody else, where it's clear that they really probably shouldn't be a focal point or like a point of action. And then they just kind of introduced a losing condition into a round that shouldn't have had that. Those are the moments where I'm like, oh, like, I'm seeing less of those though. That's the good part about it. I'm seeing them tighten up their game, where I do think that they're still a little bit more individually focused than I would want, but I would rather they be in this position than Aurora, where it's almost like you're just going to move as a group, and if that group, if you get flanked, you're in a bad position. Like, I like watching the Mongols a lot more than Aurora, I'll put it like that. I just think that the style they play lends itself to having a higher ceiling in the long run. It's just about everybody playing more and more and more perfectly, and also their individuals being in tip-top form all the time. I guess you could say that about everybody, though. I just wish they, maybe in some sense, I guess I wish they moved a little bit away from these spread out defaults and did a little bit more of what Vitality do, where you just outline what you want to do on the map and you just kind of make it obvious to everybody on your team. But yeah, it almost feels like they still are one of the teams on rounds that tries to maintain like that 2018 style of defaulting and try to run it. But it's cool. It's cool to see it. I'm not out on them. Like, I think that they're going to make it to the playoffs of the major. If you had to ask me today, are they making it to top 8 of the major? I would have to say yes. There's no way I'm going to try to go so contrarian on them. But I just haven't seen the proof yet that they can beat the best in the world, like, all the way through the BO3. And that's where I'm a little bit like, they're like almost perfectly ranked for me right now. Like, I think they are just the 5th best team in the world. So I'm not really like super high on them. I'm not really super low. I think they have kind of slotted in nicely, and they've been pretty consistent at the last couple events I've watched of them.
Here, I'll give you a counterpoint as to why I believe in this team more than I believe in Aurora, even though I actually think Aurora maybe even has a higher ceiling. I mean, they actually literally have beaten the best teams. The difference is this, Maui. When I watch Aurora fail in the playoffs, often actually Xantara's their best player does play well, and they just don't have, the rest of the team doesn't show up. The actual player who does drop off the most in Mongols, people know this, it is Senzu, who on paper should be their best player. Like, it's one of those like Stown from Astralis things. In a weird counterintuitive sense, it's actually harder for me to rationalize how Aurora, if your best player does play well but you lose, can actually improve much more. That sounds like you've got a lot of fundamental issues. If in this case Mongols really is a pretty good team in the group stage, but then their best player just plays way worse in the playoffs, that's one player that has to be fixed, mate. If that guy is also really young, if that person just himself fixes his issue, he gets over his thing, he gets some more confidence, he doesn't have as many maps so he chokes, that alone will make you the team that you are in the group stage. Like I say, in the group stage they could have beaten Vitality, mate. It was right there. They're one of the teams that I think made Vitality when they won the event. See, we weren't even playing our best at this event because I think they actually were challenged for once. And then also, I'll just throw this out there as well. The upside of the fact that the pressure is going to be huge on the big dogs at the major is exactly that if you're a Mongols type team, you might sneak in there, mate. Maybe you nick a series off a mouse or something and you get to the semis. Like that, if the pressure's bigger on them, in theory, it's less on you. So yeah, I think it's an interesting angle. Right, Maui, we actually have a first-time brand new sponsor for this show. So hit us with it. It is actually technically one that ties to a topic from last year as well.
I know. This is actually one of the sickest sponsors we've gotten for the show. It's I haven't even seen them really sponsoring too many other shows either. So I'm proud to present Wooting as one of our new sponsors. And man, I have just like a million things to say about how good Wooting are. I mean, their keyboards are just fantastic. I think they've rolled out recently the 60 HE, so like the 60% keyboard. I've been using the 80 HE.
Yes, they have the one without the numpad, basically. I've got the full one because I'm a boomer and I do my taxes on it, etc. I need the numpad for that. But if you're just a gamer, they've got the one without the numpad area.
Me too.
Yeah, I don't like a numpad. So I cut that off on mine. But yeah, I'm glad you were able to find something that fits the size that you want on that.
They have technology for everyone, boomers, zoomers, everyone.
Exactly. No, I mean, technology is the big thing when it comes to wooting. Like everything that you want or hear about in compute or keyboard updates, that is, wooting's the first on it every single time. And if they're not the first, they implement the technology almost instantaneously. Like the updates and the patches they have for it. When, for example, SnapTap was coming out from Razer, wooting was almost like, well, they actually made a poll. They were like, should we even put this on our keyboards?
Yes.
And people wanted it, and then they implemented it the next day.
They had theirs immediately, exactly, yes.
Yeah, so they had their own SOCD technology, but there's still technology, even though you're not allowed to use SnapTap anymore. They still have technology like Rapid Trigger, and Rapid Trigger is where as soon as you release your strafe key, it doesn't have to actually hit the actuation point. Like if people don't know how a keyboard works, you have to hit it and it has to get to a certain point, press down, and you have to release it from a point that's sometimes even deeper than you would have actuated it from. But instead, for wooting keyboards, if you turn on Rapid Trigger, you can let go of the key, and the second it goes up 1 millimeter, it counts as depressed. So you can actually hit counter strafe.
That already sounds sick for
faster.
strafing instantly. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, you can hit these counter strafes way faster than you otherwise would be able to. It's got a bunch of other great stuff. I mean, the warranty on it is super solid. It's a 4-year warranty. You're gonna get that. I mean, I don't even think you get that on some of the best other keyboards out there either. So this is already a huge, beyond the fact that it already feels like a competitive advantage in the tech and how good it's designed. If anything goes wrong for you, 4 years, like that's pretty long. And for our show, if you want to support us and you want to finally upgrade that grimy keyboard that you've got sitting in front of you, go to wooting.io and use the code SNAKE, just the word SNAKE, and the first 250 customers will receive a free wooting uwu, which is with the order of any wooting keyboard. It's a $50 value, and it'll also obviously support our show. So check out. I mean, I'm just gonna say, like, there are so many things you can get on their website, but if you guys are interested, you can use the wooting uwu. Is like, it's kind of better for rhythm games. It's like a 3-key sort of keyboard, which also has all of the same features of their actual keyboard. But to just have this by your side, I mean, you can just kind of put it on your desk. It's good for rhythm games. I feel like there's a lot of features that people are probably coming up for this thing that I mean, like, if you need just like any sort of extra little keypad on your desk, this is a cool little way to kind of style out what you've got there. But all in all, support the show. Go to wooting.io, use code SNAKE, and you'll get your own free wooting uwu.
There you go. Shout out to everyone who does that. Obviously, let them know we sent you, and shout out to Wooting. Right. Walle, what is your bad point? What's bad in CS at the moment?
Okay, so a bad point in CS for me, I guess this is kind of a personal point for me as well, is it's FaZe. And my point is that we need, in Counter-Strike and esports, we need a competitive FaZe. I feel like we are missing the magic that they are bringing to tournaments with their players and the team. You know, the superstars that we're used to seeing, the storylines. They are the kind of team that's going to make you want to watch the tournaments. They are the kind of team that that's going to get me into the server again, you know, just from enjoying watching Counter-Strike again. And they've had, all the superstars to back up the storyline, like Twists and Rops and Brokey, making these insane moves that, combined with, all the great talent that we have, is going to really make esports better. I feel like FaZe is such a big contributing factor to why I love esports. And that's why it's a bad point for me that we need a competitive FaZe in esports. And seeing the documentary that they did, I think it was good to get an insight. But it kind of makes you a bit worried too, because I feel like the talks that we got to hear, they didn't feel constructive firsthand. I think that the morale seemed to have deteriorated to a level where it's more frustration coming instead of trying to motivate each other. And I think that always pains me as having played in teams before, knowing what it feels like, and also having been an in-game leader. It's like when you're at that place where all you can say is, why are we doing this? Why are we playing this bad? Why are we making this decision? It's like a downward spiral. Obviously, they've been on this downward spiral for such a long time, and it makes me a bit sad to see, like, also the insight into the documentary, where you could see the frustration is really hurting them at this moment. And I understand it for sure. I hope that they can do a full reset, mentality-wise. I would like to see maybe someone like Neo take more space in the team. I think FaZe has always been a really tough team to manage, because they had such big superstars. And that's why I think they have a good combination now. They have Robin, who is used to handling these superstar players.
If people don't know, Walle literally was teammates with Robin for many, many years. I was actually wondering, by the way, do you also have a vibe? Because actually FaZe, even the way they recruit players, reminds me of SK Gaming. If people don't know, SK was always about getting the big names, and the idea is performance. If you don't make it, you get another big name, and you just keep going, right? So teams like that tend to be more about things like morale, right, than like specifics of tactics. You've got superstars, right?
Yeah, and maybe that's Robin bringing like the old school vibes too. But I think that Robin is really good with, handling these superstar players, because it's not easy because they also need management. Yes. And they also need someone to tell them, this is not good enough. You got to do this. This type of behavior is not going to be tolerated. I don't care who you are. I think that's the type of person that Robin is, and that's what he's good at. And then they have Neo, who's obviously a great player himself. He has done so much. So in game, I think he is good for them. But I would like to see someone other than Carrigan having to take this responsibility. Maybe Neo could.
But it's, I know what you mean. If you ever watch those documentaries, you would almost think Carrigan was the coach, not Neo. Like, Neo just tends to be sat in the rooms watching them, whereas I know what you mean. I sometimes want him to come in and have like a big speech or something,
Yeah, I think it would help the team a lot, and it would help Carrigan a lot. I know that Robin is there, but maybe he's not there full time. But the guys obviously need a full mental reset, because what I'm hearing is not constructive. It's not, this is what we need to do next time, and this is how we're going to win. It's mostly beating yourself down even more. And I hope to see a FaZe that we can cheer for soon, and that we can be proud of, because I honestly think that FaZe is one of the coolest brands that we have in esports, and they make the space better. Having them in esports is going to bring in new viewers and new players to the game only by being FaZe.
For sure.
Because I know this myself. Even as an old player, I tend to be drawn to the storylines and the superstar players and the emotions and, the mentality of never giving up. And I really think that we need it, because we have a lot of boring teams and players too in the space that are not gonna enhance the experience.
I'm always just gonna have mad respect for Carrigan for even getting eliminated at, I think it was Katowice 2024, and he just says that he still hopes that the tournament does well and brings in the viewership and sets new records. Yeah. It's just such a base thing to say. I mean, like, not even caring at the end of the day about the ultimate product, which in a way I feel like some people take it for granted. I mean, there are some people that just absolutely love the game. They would do it no matter what, and all the respect in the world to them. But I know that everybody that's on practically every top 5 team, including Donk, definitely doesn't dislike the fact that they get paid tens, hundreds of thousands of dollars while doing everything that they're doing. So end of the day, and I mean, like, the reason that professional athletes have the salaries that they do are because the media rights are so lucrative, and that the sponsorships are bringing so much, and that there are so many eyeballs. So it's interestingly, actually, I talked to this is a bit of a tangent, but all in all, I mean, like, I can, actually, it's so much of a tangent. Who cares? Whatever. I was actually having
name drop coming. Come on, hit me with it. Hit me with the name drop. Hit me with it.
Well, okay, I was actually eating with Papa Smith.
There you go. We knew that if you don't know he's the guy who runs FlyQuest. Okay, there you go.
Yeah, I was eating with Papa Smithy and FlyQuest's GM the other day, and
then what's weird is Get Right walks in. He goes, "Mauisnake, I love your analysis, but that was separate to the story." Anyway, keep going.
Yeah, and their offices are in LA,
okay,
so like, yeah, it's just kind of a weird. It was just, we just hung out and got some drinks and some food, and we like, he brought up the fact that Counter-Strike he said it was the only esport that's just gaining viewership right now.
Oh, right.
It's the only one. Like, it's a crazy stat right now that the only esport, and people are kind of waiting for that next esport that's going to actually.
No, I can tell you, League of
line.
Legends, which obviously was the biggest for a long time, year on year, that's getting worse in most of the regions, which is obviously his main game. It goes down every year, basically.
Yeah, and so, I mean, I think Dota's been going down for a while now. I mean, Valorant
makes sense. Yeah,
I think that it's just like Valorant. There's too many games that are flavor of the monthy, and like, Fortnite obviously would have been one. Valorant,
Apex Legends, there's a whole bunch. Yeah, of course, PUBG, all that
it's
shit.
just Overwatch in the past. It's just games that have a difficult barrier to entry, and then also if you go away from the game for 6 months and you come back to it, like I used to watch every single TI big S tier Dota event. Now I come back to the game and I just have no idea.
It's a lot harder to watch if you don't know the meta, for sure. Yeah.
Yes, and I'm hoping that it's explained to me in some way, but like, I'm playing catch up so much that I just have kind of given up on watching it as an esport, and that's why I just kind of go back now to trad sports and Counter-Strike. It just makes things a lot easier for me, and I think that's kind of why CS has done so well. I feel like again, it's getting off topic from what you were saying about FaZe, but like, in a way, like, we want, like, FaZe's lineage, like the history that FaZe brings and the history that a lot of the players bring will keep people invested into this game, even in a way that's greater than just, oh, FaZe need to change their strats, because they do. Like, I think FaZe strategically need to revamp the way that they play a little bit. I would love to. I mean, getting into the details is something that I need to take a little bit more time to bring more rounded thoughts about why they're not doing so well. But I think that when you've got a team with Simple, Elige, Kerrigan, you've already got insane draw from just that name value. And
crazy lineup.
If you make it work, it will continue, as it was at Dallas, to be the most watched team. And in a sense, like, people are drawn to just big numbers and big teams like that. When people are browsing Twitch, they will just see, people go, including myself, just to like live streams, highest view count. And when FaZe was playing, they were the most viewed stream on Twitch. And that, like, they're the most viewed thing that's going on the internet. It's like, and if you're the biggest live stream on Twitch, with China, not excluding China here, who have their own fucking platforms that I don't know anything about, you're basically, in the English speaking world, the biggest live stream. That is an insane claim to have, that no other team, even a Vitality team, well, Vitality can set records like in later stages of a tournament, but even a group stage opening game of that FaZe lineup will be the most watched live stream in the Western world. That's such a ridiculous feat that they've captured.
And I think that FaZe is, to me, is the only esports brand that can do this, like, consistently. They can bring the excitement to tournaments, and that's why my point is that it's a bad point that we need FaZe to come back, because we need a competitive phase in esports. It's gonna make esports better and bring more viewers, and just in general, it's gonna be a lot more fun. And I can remember that, coming back to esports for me like 2 years ago, one of the things that really caught my interest was actually watching Tier 1 and watching teams like FaZe, and I'm like, I still love this game. And because of teams like FaZe, I'm not gonna like name drop any teams that I think are boring, but there are a lot of teams that wouldn't really keep me glued to the game like FaZe does, and I really hope that we get to see them, compete in top fours going forward, maybe after the summer. I mean, we're going to see some player changes, obviously, in the lineup, but we need them to get back to their form for sure.
No, if people don't know, at IEM Dallas, obviously it was a mixture of FaZe plus the simple thing. The 2 highest rated matches were 2 of the group stage games, basically the one they didn't play against BC game, the one against Liquid that they lost, and the heroic game they also lost. Those had higher peak viewers than the fucking final and the semis. But remember, the final was like an all-time great team winning another massive chat. That should be automatically the biggest one. And by the way, I'd even tie it to that. I think that's why also the current FaZe project's so exciting, because I think we need FaZe and we need Simple. Those are 2 people who automatically bring narratives, excitement. Because another thing you're getting to here, Walle, is even though in the game itself, for a professional player, I only expect you to try to win the game. If that means if you have a style, like if you remember a few years back when that Outsiders Virtus Pro team won that major, right, that was kind of whack because they played like an almost anti-CS, like super slow. Now, here's the thing. If you're a player, that's all you're expected to do. Try and win the game if you can. But there is a value in CS that you're basically getting to here that goes beyond whether you're the best team or not. Like, in fact, didn't really last year, that really proved why FaZe is necessary. Because there was plenty of times last year they weren't even close to the best. But it still gets you hyped if they're in the playoffs. If they're playing a top team, it gives you an extra excitement. Essentially, what I'm getting to, it's not just about winning the match by the rules. How you play it is very important too. Like, I've made this point in the past. One of the reasons I love to watch FaZe play is even if they lose the game and I'm pulling for them, it might be the best game I've ever seen. Like, the way they play forces the game to be what everyone wants CS to be. And by the way, I can tell you, FaZe Clan is easily the most popular team, not only with broadcast people, because they want exciting matches, but with all the old school players, Walle. All the ones who are the 1.6 players, that's the team they fuck with. Because first of all, they've got the veterans, they've got the guys who are 30 but are still good. But also, they do exactly what I think CS is the best at, which is CS is the biggest game. Think of what we talked about in point 1, where the difference between being really good in your bedroom and being really good on the stage of an arena is enormous. So that means if you are that player where you're not even in the group stage that good at the moment, maybe your form's up and down, but if you get to that semi-final, the other guy has to worry about you on the other side of the server. You're a veteran. You don't crumble under pressure. I think what people fucked with who are veterans is FaZe has that quality like you get in sports where even when you're not the top dog, it's like, yeah, but put us both in a pressure game and I'll hold my own, I'll bring my side to the table. And as a result, I think another reason I agree with you that we need FaZe is if people ever watch CSGO, I used to frame Virtus Pro, the Polish team with Neo and Taz and all, Snacks, I used to frame them the same way. One, they were also the most entertaining team to watch play. They had an amazing style. But I always thought the coolest thing was, even when they didn't win, and that team actually didn't used to be number 1 that often, what they meant was whoever is number 1, though, is going to be fucking battle-tested, mate. They're going to have to actually beat that team to win their majors. So I always said with VP and CSGO, go look at all the great teams. They pretty much all had to, pass the Virtus Pro test. I want it to be like that with FaZe. I mean, if we just talked in an earlier point about the Aurora and the MongolZ, mate, if there'd actually been a really good FaZe clan, that would have exposed those teams right there. If they were, were better than you in the group stage, a MongolZ tech team, but then a FaZe could, beat you in the arena, you'd know exactly what MongolZ has to work on. And it's nothing to do with strategy, shooting people in the head. It would be like your nerve. How do you play when the big pressure moment comes? You have to make a decision. I agree. That's what they were the best at. So to me, I would say this. I think people get confused because in 2022, they were the best team. That's not what people love about FaZe. FaZe Clan in CS is basically synonymous with entertaining big match. And isn't that what we all tune in for? It's exactly why we all watch the tournament. Because I do think that whole thing because I do think that is what died this year. The whole, their clutch, even if they're playing bad, if they sneak in the playoffs, still get it done somehow. That's what we need back. We need a team like that. I'm with you. I do actually think that would be so important. And I also think, like I say, I think it adds to the value of the teams that eventually beat them, that you beat a team where they didn't go away easily and you had to battle them in the playoffs and they're not going to roll over because you beat them on map 1 or something. I think we do need to. That's probably the biggest thing we're missing in the scene right now, I think, yeah. It's a good point.
I think that back in the day, teams were more similar to FaZe.
Right.
Like the old 1.6 teams. I don't know. They feel like it's a lot more aura and confidence, and they know that they're gonna be better when it comes to the stage, and that type of confidence is always gonna pull you in. Having the superstars and having the storylines and the way that they could play, to turn matches around and momentum, all that excitement. There are not many teams that are gonna get you excited in that sense, and that's also like a hard thing to pull off, to actually have that type of energy in the games. It's more of a like old school rock and roll.
By the way, it's also pretty wild that Carrigan literally played against you, bro. He was playing against you and he still played. That's so crazy, isn't it?
That's crazy. Yeah, it's crazy. I have in my team, I have players that weren't born.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So that's crazy. The today's pros were actually born after I ended my career.
Yeah.
That shows you the longevity of CS, and the fact that we're probably gonna be here for a bit longer as well.
Yes,
which is great. Let's just enjoy it while it lasts.
No, I actually saw something like that the other day where I saw that Belarusian player called Tine from Heroic said like, "Oh, I used to like be a big fan of Marklov," and I looked it up like, "Bro, you were 9 when he was good." What? Like, because when they say that, you feel like they're saying like a couple of years ago. I used to watch his. It's like, yeah, when you were like literally like the tanker truck goes first. Oh, did you get a 5K? Oh, awesome! Like, give me a break, mate. All right, yeah. You modeled your game, did you? I bet you did. You fucking whatever.
I played Markelov. I can see why Tenier would have liked him for sure.
Sure. Right, Maui, what is your bad point?
Mine is that I brought up a take a while ago about Ash and how his trajectory is slightly scaring me because it's reminiscent of Tabson and Queserado, how they're just kind of staying with their comfort projects.
Okay.
But regardless of that, I mean, I think an obvious bad about what's happening at the upcoming major is that GamerLegion, who is on a clear upwards trajectory, is not going to be there.
For sure.
This is probably the one team of, usually with how the RMRs worked, we'd get one team that's in the top 10 that didn't qualify, whether that in the past was G2 or Cloud9. I can't remember all of the instances, but usually you just have like one of these elite teams that doesn't make it. I'm not saying that GamerLegion is of the same status even of that Cloud9 that didn't qualify for Paris or the G2 that didn't qualify for Rio, but they're the next rung down, and to not see them after they have qualified to 3 of the last 4 playoffs that they played at Bucharest, then Melbourne immediately after. They had a weird bounce out of Astana, but then they qualified to the playoffs again of Dallas and took a map off of Falcons. Actually, they took a map off of Falcons in fact, they got eliminated by Falcons all 3 times that they actually that they lost in all of these playoffs. I am upset that this GamerLegion didn't make it, and I think that the point that I actually, in a weird way, kind of care more about, almost not all. Nah, it's not. I don't care more about this, but I care about this a lot. Is that because the cutoff for the MRQ invites and the actual major invites came as late or as early as they did, we didn't get to see this upward trajectory. GamerLegion, which was one of the nice developing stories for the last couple months of the calendar, or of the season, that is. I mean, it's just a shame, all in all. I feel like that it would be nice if the cutoff for the major was a little bit closer to the actual time of the major, but given that people have to secure visas and everything like that, I guess like where I'd want to spin this is that it'd be cool if for Budapest, which is, I would imagine, less difficult to acquire a visas for than America, I would like for the MRQ and major invites to be at a slightly later date, because a team like GamerLegion, had they had the opportunity to play out Bucharest and Melbourne they probably would have made it.
Yes,
I think
so.
their VRS ranking would have shot up enough that they would have just gotten a stage 2 invite instead of having to play the MRQ itself. But yeah, just a shame that GamerLegion doesn't make it to this major, because they've obviously just shown in the last 2 months that they are a top 10 team.
What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, I totally agree that what we've seen from GamerLegion puts them in the spot that they should be at the major for sure, because I think that they hit their low form, for the major in that MRQ. That's when they hit their low form, and they've had plenty of peaks before and after that shows us that this team should be at the major. There's no question about it. I would actually probably compare them to, they are the next team that is going to be in the same position as we have maybe Aurora and MongolZ now.
Yeah, that's fair.
Where they are usually performing well in group stages, and in later stages, they are also going to face the same tests that MongolZ and Aurora are doing. And it's going to be really interesting to see, like in bigger tournaments, if Ash and his team are going to be able to pull through before we see Aurora and MongolZ do. So that's going to be a really interesting one to see, if he's able to get his troops in line and all of the game plans and strats to be able to overcome that mental hump or whatever it may be for teams at this level. So yeah, it would have been, they definitely deserve to be there. I think with recent results, it's a big shame that they are not, because I think had they been, we could have been witnessing another team and players that are in the making to take the next step. The major could have been that place for them for sure.
No, I'm with you. I also think that, first and foremost, the obvious reason why this sucks is I actually agree. I think that their performance at the MCQ, which, remember, sadly is online, it's not LAN, was worse than any of their fucking LANs they've played at. Like, you get me the most cynical PGL performance they had. It was still better than that. Like, that was almost literally the worst day possible. And I have to, I think the online factor has to be part of it, because a lot of the teams that they were playing, those teams wouldn't do anything on our LAN. What are we talking about? So that does bum me out, because it makes me feel like, what was the point of the circuit? Like, this is one of the teams. I'm with you. If we're looking at teams, like, look, I'm not saying they're like top 7 or 8, but they're right outside. I agree. They're a team where if they'd have been at the major, they'd have been a team like in with like a dark horse chance to make the playoffs. Like maybe they could sneak in the last spot if they get, the BO1 upset or something. And I also agree, you just look how they've played generally. Like the standard has been worth it. The problem I have is this, is if you go and just look at the stage 1, the opening part of the major, mate, forget this question, Maui. Which teams would GamerLegion be better? I'd ask the other question. Which teams aren't they better than? As far as I can tell, they're better than every single team in stage 1. Like what? Like if I put them into the stage 1, spoiler, I would be picking them as my 3-0 team immediately. Like this team would murk that stage. So already that's just, to me, there's a flaw with qualification, because I think what they've done in the season is good enough already to potentially be at this major. Or at least if you'd have had a LAN qualifier for the MCQ, I think they also would have qualified then. By the way, I could handle it if they lost the LAN. The fact it's online tortures me, because I don't see what the fuck that has to do with the major. Then also, you look at the players they have. First of all, by the way, they're a team doing everything right. They're scouting the way that you guys all want. They're developing talents. They even brought back old player like Rez and reclaimed him. Think about if you're the team. First of all, if you're Ash, you almost earned this fucking spot with how you played this season, but you don't get it. Then if you're a player like PR, an up-and-comer, mate, you're one of the hottest up-and-comers. You don't get to play the World Championship. And if you are the aforementioned Rez, you went through all those hard times in NIP, where the joke is you still used to make the major half the time, and now you're actually in a good team on the up, and you're having one of your best years in ages, and you're not even going to get to play a single game at the major. That just sucks. That sucks for everyone involved. And then also,
Shame.
I also do think, compared to a lot of the other teams, like I say, especially stage 1, they have so much more experience than these squads. Like you said, they're a team that make the odd playoffs. And if anything, now we're looking, when do you go to the next stage where you win a playoff series and you go to the semis, and now you're in that conversation. Yeah, like before, can you match up with Mouse and Falcons and these squads? And then lastly, I'll just put this out there, on Maui's point as well. Here is, I think, the most jarring part of the circuit with VRS, is the fact that VRS doesn't run up to like, right, that's the last tournament. Now we got like a month off till the major. We we basically find out you didn't qualify to the major, but then if you're GamerLegion Australia, you then go to lands and perform, and it just bombs us out. Because it's like, well, that was great. Oh, shame you're not going to be at the major. Like, that sucks. That part feels really off with the circuit, because when I'm watching it, Maui, in fact, I'll tell you what, we're actually lucky. What if actually, like, the last tournament was one where GamerLegion had made like a mental run and got to the final, and then you wouldn't even see him at the major? Like, what? That's it. Like, even though it's on a lower level, we had this last year, Maui. We went to the fucking Elisa LAN in Finland and watched GamerLegion's team beat Heroic and MongolZ, two of the top teams in the world, and then we knew they were at the major, so it was like, what was that all for? What was the point of all that? Like, and now I'm actually anti-hype against the other two teams, and I can't even watch you play to know if you're any good. And you don't know, by the way, that hype lasted about like a week, and then everyone forgot about them. Like, it was actually a bomber. I know what you mean, and it actually made me question the whole fucking circuit. No, I think it's a very valid point. That's a valid point.
It's a shame that we don't get to see these teams, at the pinnacle of the season.
Yes.
When all of us can see that they definitely deserve to be there.
Yeah.
And you could also see that they were really bummed out about having their lowest performance during an online qualifier, and then performing really well on the other. On the other events, you could see the players tweeting, maybe Ash was doing that too, having to play that online and hitting your worst performance. They were really bummed out, and I hope, that, like you said, it's a really tough one, because PR, it could have been like his major breakthrough. And for Res, that was the redemption arc that he deserves and needs.
Yeah.
For his career to actually land at the major and maybe be the dark horse to go deep in that tournament. So I really feel for the guys that they deserved it, and I hope they are. I feel that they're gonna be okay, but I hope that they are not bummed out for too long, and then they realize, we should have been there, we deserve to be there, and we're gonna be there next time for the next major.
Right, my bad point is going to seem counterintuitive, because normally this would be a good thing, but I actually think a bad point for real is the condition Vitality is in as a team heading to the major. Because think about it, right? They've won 6 LANs in a row, all the matches. They haven't lost since the first LAN of the year, where basically just out the gate they just lost with a brand new lineup, and that was the only time they showed any weakness. Even then, by the way, if you ever go watch, it wasn't like it was easy for them to be beaten. It was still even hard back then. Ever since then, they never lose. And because they never lose, here's why I actually think it's bad, their narrative coming into the major. They might be the only team I've ever seen where there's only one result that's acceptable, which is literally first place. If this team even comes second, it will be considered an insane failure. And the worst thing is, if you noticed on Twitter, I said this many times the last 2 events, I actually thought if this was WWE wrestling, where you're trying to hype the main event so everyone buys the pay-per-view for WrestleMania, you would never do it this way. You would never do it that one team's unbeatable. What you'd do is, you'd have had it at Dallas, or maybe one event before, or maybe the Blast Rivals, you'd have had one time like Falcons or Mouse beat them. It doesn't even have to be in the final. They can still win the event, but they just have to one time lose a series, and then it would be like, ooh, more out there. Ooh, can they actually win the major? Now instead, literally the first storyline that will dominate the major is Vitality going to win undefeated? The second someone beats them, we're allowed to then have, can Falcons win, and Nico, and is this Mouse's time? But until then, the whole narrative is just going to be, is Vitality just going to walk to the final and lift the trophy? And if they don't, the worst thing is, I can tell you for real, you've already seen the ankles of the world hit at this. People are going to go hard as fuck if they don't win it, by the way, and be like, who cares about the rest of the season? Nah, they were, by the way, I can tell you, this is where Maui, they'll never believe me, but I'm not a Ziwu hater. By the way, this will play really badly for Ziwu's career if he doesn't win it. Like, people will just be like, you had the greatest team ever and you didn't win, you had a streak. Yeah. So I actually think, essentially, the narrative stakes are almost too high in this one. And I think it's crazy because it is still the major. Like, you don't win majors for free. So I feel like, even though it's cool, like the streak's really cool and the idea they make the eras cool, I feel like you're in a pretty fucked up scenario if coming second would be considered failure. What do you think, Valet?
Yeah, I know what you mean. And coming into the major, having this streak that they're on, it's just silly at this point. And I think that it could work against them for sure, to have this historic streak going into the major. For most people, this would add a lot of unnecessary pressure. to be on the streak. You're at the final event where it really matters, and that could be too much pressure to put on yourself. And I definitely think that for them it would have been better to lose before the major, just to have that done.
Yeah.
And then they
pressure
could
release,
pressure release, and and still feel like, okay, now that's done. That's something we don't have to think about and entertain. This streak, this historic records, and all of this stuff. I think that probably they would have preferred that too. And I would add that if they would succeed in winning the major, I would count these players as they they must have some of the craziest mental fortitude that we've ever seen in esports in any eras and stuff like this, if they are able to pull it off, because the added pressure with every event leading up to the major, just the time cycle that we've seen, if they do it, I think I actually get like goosebumps just thinking about it. If they would pull it off, I'm actually thinking that it's like too much to ask. But if they do, it's gonna be, they're cemented in history with like the perfect season, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Has it been done before in this sense? But I would have preferred, for their sake, that they went into it, like you said, going into it on this perfect streak. I think it's that would hurt most players, putting too much pressure on themselves, actually. So let's see if they are the ones that can deal with all that pressure. Watching guys like Apex, I love his style too. I guess that's also like us 1.6ers.
Yes.
Loving guys like Apex and Carrigan and these loud, confident guys.
Yeah.
If anyone's gonna do it, I think it's gonna be him, right? For sure.
I just what I am not so eagerly awaiting is the fact that, the chance that Vitality loses a single BO1, the streak for matches dies, but then we have to keep up this narrative of they haven't lost any BO3s or BO5s. It just muddies everything so much. If they imagine, because even going into next season, imagine they win this, but they lost the one BO1 they lose is to God knows who. Like, it could be the Mongols, for example, in the group stage at stage 3, and then they win the final group stage games. They win the major without dropping a BO3, and then we go into the next season and we're like, well, they technically I hate doing they technicallys on a broadcast or really any kind of podcast in general, just because like it just makes everything seem so much less neat. So this is a very selfish way that it's like, oh, it's going to make telling their story more awkward for a lot of us on the actual product. And I feel like the idea that the narrative buildup is so difficult that it's probably going to nerf them to an extent. I think that it's good. I think it's good. I think it's actually really, really good. I think it's just gonna add tension, because if you want to just look at it results wise, I feel like going into this, if they just win everything, and it doesn't have that same feeling of, oh, well, they came and did what they were supposed to. I feel like that's kind of a weird way of downplaying championship achievements. Like, for example, Spirit at Astana winning it, they did what they were supposed to, but it's like, it's still a it's still a trophy.
Yeah, sure.
It's still something that should be celebrated, but that's when this much pressure is on the line, when the arena is going to have the effect that it does, it's going to be more than just like, they just came and won. It's like, no. The gravity of it, and anybody that's watching and has been in these kind of situations or just like has felt the energy of these kinds of spaces will know it's not just them coming and doing what they're supposed to. They still, if they win, they would still have to play an incredibly strong game. Like I don't think they're not going to get away with just playing their C game and winning the major. Like you can't do that in a BO3, especially for the championship. Like you bring your C game, that other team, the likelihood the other team brings their B or A game, and that MauI's, Falcons, Spirit, or even a less likely suspect can just bring their A game. It's too high. There's too much of a chance of that.
And imagine if we would see like some of the players or the team, some of the players like Robs or Messi or Apex just be playing even better than we've seen them done like the past few events. If they can actually elevate their game, I mean, I really hope that they're gonna pull through on the icing on the cake, the final step of the season. I'm really hoping for them to at least make it to the final.
No, absolutely. I'll even say, by the way, I even feel like fans have already, this is where fans are different from nerds like me. I feel like fans already are taking for granted the streak, Maui. I saw people for real on Reddit, when that graphic gets posted, which they've sort of updated, where they're moving up the win streaks, and there's the 60 for NIP, and they're on 30 now, and the Liquid's on the 22. There was people going, this was an upvoted comment, bro. It was like, how likely is it that they break the 60? It's like, well, one team ever did it, and they're only halfway, so very unlikely. Yeah, like, bro, why you? They're saying that like they're at 99%. They're halfway there. So anyway, that's how I already know even how insane that accomplishment hasn't been appreciated because they haven't won the major, mate. If they win the major, then it'll all be fine. It'll be properly recognised as the all-time great one. Right, we have one more sponsor for this show, and that is going to be, and I will just change now, Turtle Beach. I will now put them on. These are the Turtle Beach Stealth 700s. You can see, bigger than my other ones, but actually really nice. The way they fit over the ears, very nice. You can actually, by the way, they don't have any of the problems gaming headsets have, where after you've had them for an hour or two, it hurts you. They don't at all. These feel super smooth. They have like the memory foam in the ears as well, sort of mold around you a bit. Even just putting them on, by the way, actually not compared to normal headphones, blocks out sound a little bit more. They also have the thing where you can plug in 2 USB drives, sticks, and basically they have a crossplay feature where you can have 2 devices plugged in at once and you press a button and it goes between them. So take a phone call while you're play on your Xbox and have music playing in the background. There's all sorts of easy, listen to a podcast while you're cooking some food in the other room or whatever. They're obviously wireless. They have all the controls on the back, so you can adjust everything you want to, like as you go, and you don't have to go onto like a control panel. You can do it all from the headset. Yeah, I think they're excellent. Like I'm not someone who's usually that into gaming headset stuff. I think the price point for the build quality and the tech is excellent, and so they obviously have the great like super long battery life and quick charge and all that stuff. So head to turtlebeach.com and use the code CSGO, easy to remember, it's on the screen, for 10% off your entire order. That's 10% off your entire order at turtlebeach.com with promo code CSGO. They will ask you at the checkout where you heard about them. Just say like Last Free Nation or MauiSnake or Snake Banter or something. Also, they don't only do headphones like that. They also have like every type of gaming device you can imagine: keyboards, mice, flight controllers, driving sticks and stuff, all sorts of stuff out there. So thank you to Turtle Beach, and thank you to anyone who, from our viewers, takes advantage of the special offer and gets savings on some great Turtle Beach gear. Right, the last segment of the show is the ugly segment. The ugly segment. A bit like my rude comment where I didn't say he was like Theoden at the end when he was glorious. But I said he was like all the withered one with all grim worm tongue talking. So a bit like that, it's not quite good, it's not bad, it's just in the middle somewhere. What is ugly at the moment, Valle? What's ugly?
Okay, so this is also very, I think, personal to me. And I think it ties a little bit back to my point about FaZe as well. And I think what's ugly about the space is that the community narrative is too influential.
Okay.
For my taste. I think we're seeing careers that are getting impacted because of this.
Okay.
We see, it's the internet and people are looking for reactions and trolling, want to express opinions about things that they don't understand. And I get it. For me, and I've been writing a little bit on Twitter about that too, it's at a point sometimes where it gets too harsh and loses perspective too.
Okay.
And we don't have the insights. And I guess you could say that we, in a sports environment and a performance environment, we are allowed to question whichever player that we want in whatever way that we choose. But for me, it gets a bit ugly, and it also takes too much space. The community narratives.
Okay.
And I think it happens to casters, talents, hosts, teams, and players, of course. We have the fresh example of Hooksy, who's been really in the crosshair for a long time.
Yeah.
And eventually his brand is going to be that he's not good enough for his role, and it's heavily influenced by community narrative.
For sure.
Like 95% of the feedback that's coming his way, people don't have the insight to actually be pushing the narrative this way. And that's my point, that we don't have the insights into the teams. We don't know the dynamics in teams or circumstances that could have impacted someone like Hooksy to why he didn't succeed in his role. I mean, in theory, it could be something that is related to Nico and his move to Falcons. But the person we hang for it is Hooksy, and that's what I don't like. And I'm always one also for, taking responsibility, accountability, stuff like this. But I also love a good redemption arc, like Res, like we talked about in GamerLegion, or Hooksy. I would love to see him go on a redemption arc, just like to prove that he belongs. Hopefully, we saw in Astralis he was doing a good job. And another example of this is also Taz, he's my generation, right? And my point is, we don't know what he brings to the table. He could be the type of person that players like Nico, Hunter, and these superstar guys, Taz could be the guy that they need, in the same sense that Robin would be good for superstar players. Someone who has done it before them, who knows what it means, who also, Taz is someone that I would think has the authority to question these superstars. And not because I think that in any team or team environment, be it work or be it sports or performance, someone has to be the guy who also is going to be a pain in the ass, who's going to be like, you're out of line right now, and you don't have all the answers, and you need to work on this stuff, and not just be, be run over by these big personalities. So I don't know this about Taz, of course, but I would be careful to push a narrative that I don't know. And also, I think how it ties back into FaZe is just that we want these players and teams and profiles. We want them to express themselves and to be their fullest self of emotions and entertainment. And I think what we're doing with, if we jump on the trending narrative, we're gonna suppress these personalities that can actually help grow the game. Because like we want Cadian as an example who is Cadian. We don't want to change this guy, because no matter what you think about him in different circumstances, he's still gonna be good for the game.
Absolutely.
And for the entertainment value. And so I think, of course, it's the internet, but for my taste, I think that I feel sorry for some of the guys that are in the crosshair for this type of narratives where they are the one who has to take the blame. But then again, are they paid enough so that they should take the blame for this? That's also another question.
Yeah, that's a valid question.
Is it part of the game? Am I paid enough so I can, be the scapegoat and be okay with that, or do we see like Hooks' career being destroyed? Maybe undeserved, So that's my ugly point. It's a bit personal. I don't like the, the trending narratives.
Yeah.
I would like to know more about the insights of how a dynamic works and circumstances before I make my judgments.
Okay, I would say that as someone that is a narrative pusher and an opinion deliverer, I believe people have a right to discuss their opinions in online forums or podcasts like this, and it should just stick to the discussion space of the game. But to give some charity to this take, I would say that specifically, general managers should not be swayed entirely by what talking heads have to say when this space is being observed. The GMs are the people that are ultimately responsible, or whoever is running the team, whether that's, because obviously there's different hierarchies of who is able to make decisions at different teams, whether that's the coach, the general manager, sometimes like the president or anybody else that's involved in the company. Those people, it needs to be put on them to make sure that if they're firing Hooksy, they're not just listening to what's being said on Hot Take Point Made. Like that is a show for entertainment purposes.
Yes.
Like to peel back the curtain here, we are saying things that are supposed to be a bit hotter than usual on that show. Like that's the whole premise of it. But some of the narratives that come out of that show, like there needs to be a tinge of reality enough in the take, or else it just feels like we're saying absolute shit. Like we're not trying to say things that are unbelievable. But if community sentiment, like on Twitter, is getting to general managers, they've just lost the plot. If anybody should be then fired for bad moves, you should probably, before any GM is allowed to make a move, it should be cleared by higher management, and they should look at their screen time on Twitter, HLTV forums, and any similar platform. If they exceed a certain threshold of 2 hours a day on any of this sort of media.
I like the way you're like inventing like the equivalent of parental controls, but for GMs and coaches. Like, stay off fucking Twitter. You've been on there too long. You've been on for 3 hours today.
They need to. For us, it's important for us to get our finger on the pulse so that we know where the community sentiment is to shape takes and also push narratives. Sure. But if a GM is doing that, then they are they almost disqualify themselves by simply being on those platforms at length, because even if you think you are impervious to it, eventually some of those narratives will seep through if you read it repeatedly, day after day after day after day, that Hooksy's a bad caller said by absolutely plebs, like literally people with no credentials whatsoever. Then you should be like, that's where, okay, if I want to actually relate this to anybody, when Rugga said that there's no shot that Hooksy's going to be on Astralis, or that they weren't even considering,
that's a good point.
I then have to now question entirely Rugga, what Rugga is doing as a coach. Like, why is he just taking what like Kassad and Richard are saying about Hooksy, and he thinks that that's going to win him points as a coach? It's like, if you watch,
really proves my point. It's so crazy, and I just have to say that I agree with you also that GMs aren't fired enough in this space, because how can you? And that's almost more of a hot take.
Yeah, true.
But how can you continue failing to build your team season after season after season, finding new scapegoats every time? So I think that's a really valid point too. Like, sometimes the but they are not the public figure, right? Hooks is in the trenches doing the...
Oh, Taz, like you say, it's always the people who are playing the game or coaching, yeah.
Yeah. So that's a really good point. And Rega, that was also quite shocking.
I also agree, Maui. I don't even know if that is 100% what he thinks, but I do think that he knew that if I say this out loud, it'll be a popular opinion and people think Hooksy sucks. I do think part of it was to get brownie points, Felt like that.
Yeah.
Was that your point, by the way, Maui? Do you have more?
Yeah, that was
All
it.
right.
That was it.
Well, I would just say, generally, I do agree. Like, first of all, you'll notice I've actually done this the entire time on this very show, Maui. Look, here's where this will blow your mind and none of you can get this. I don't think Taz is a very good coach at Tier 1. And bear in mind, he didn't have any history before this of coaching a top team. I think with what he's done in G2 so far, I don't know that he necessarily earned his spot. But guess what? Just like Hooksy, that doesn't mean I think he has to be banished to the wilderness and can never play CS again. Like, spoiler, I would say maybe he should go down himself to a heroic type team and he can coach it and then he can show me what he can do, right? So one of the points is on this show, essentially, I'm sort of with Maui. I think Taz is overrated as a coach of G2. But you'll notice I've gone out of my way on this show for a whole fucking year and a half at this point in time to try and build in the possibility that I can't actually know what he does in the team though. Because notice what everyone always overreacts with Taz is the timeouts, right? When you hear the timeout and it sounds like he's saying nothing and he's never saying anything tactical, it makes someone go, right, that means he isn't a tactical thinker. He doesn't understand that part of the game. He's just a cheerleader. And no, because here's the point. What you've already done that's a mistake there is you've acted like the only area we judge coaches is what they say in timeouts. Like, how about all the coaching behind the scenes? How about in the practice room? How about in the scrims? How about before the match? How about what does he say off stage between map 1 and map 2? Like, these are areas that can be very important. I can tell you in football and traditional sports, there are some amazing coaches who aren't that good, by the way, in-game adjustments. Like, they don't make the X's and O's tweak. They do it before the game. They do it after the half. They do it in the 2 weeks before the season. That's where they do their work. And how are you, Valle? When I look at Taz, the first person I think of is another person from our era, is Robban and FaZe. In that team, because we all knew they already had Carrigan, nobody flames Robban for never being the guy going, guys, in this timeout, I need like a tempo check. No, we all know that he was there as a mega veteran to actually be the person that they could turn to if you were a Rops, a Twist, a massive name player who knows that, like Nico back in the day, these guys, that's someone who can relate to them on a level that like someone like Ash from GamerLegion can't relate to them. He's never been in a major semi-final and played and had pressure to perform. Robban has, Taz has, they've been there. And actually for those players, I agree. I mean, I think Robban's the best example because everyone I think agrees he did do a great job in whatever he did within FaZe. There's a reason that dynamic worked. It played off each other. Like Carrigan could be the nerd and then he could be the sort of social aspect. And I can tell you, especially I know the old school FaZe, the one that was like Cat Nico and Guardian. So that team never would have survived without a Robban. I'm telling you, he had to be there to like be the big brother and stop people arguing and get people back on course or pick you up when you lost a tournament. Like that's the strategy guy doesn't do that.
Imagine being having to tell Nico, having an argument with Nico.
Absolutely.
It can't be any coach who's coming from, who doesn't have the accolades for Nico to respect that. And I know this from talking to Robban too, that, he had to go into clashes with some of these big players in heated arguments. And that's the type of stuff that you would never see.
Yes.
To keep the big players in check and to have them perform in the system, not become too much of a diva in a performance team environment. And I suspect, not knowing that Taz is, like you said, probably a similar coach to Robban. As would I be myself. I would also be that type of no nonsense type of coach.
I can tell you that example we're giving is even a famous thing that exists in traditional sports. Here's why, aside from Robban's own career, why he can do that to an Eco or a Rops. Here's the difference, Valle. If I just go as a coach that's just a nerd who's like a guy who watches all the demos, if I go, hey, you shouldn't do things this way, the problem is an Eco or Rops can go, who the fuck are you? But if instead I phrased the same thing, hey, Forrest wouldn't have done it that way. He'd have like prepped for an hour. Mate, you're not going to go, who the fuck's Forest? You're going to go, oh, okay, that's interesting, actually. You've got a point there. I'm going to think about that in a way I wouldn't have otherwise. And then lastly, on the other one, on the Huxley one, I actually think that is a perfect example of where GMs and teams do overreact to fan bases. Because one, I actually do agree with what Maui's saying. I don't think it's that like the coach sits down and goes, let's let Reddit decide the team. But if you've been told every event that you fail like G2, it's because of Huxley, it's in your brain. You are going to be aware that the second I release him, some of that pressure goes. So even if that wasn't my number one move, it gives you an extra reason why I should do it as an implied value to that move beyond just, do I want a different in-game leader? And I actually think Huxley's the best example ever of where people do go to extreme. If you can only be good enough for the top team or you're a total piece of shit bomb, which is what people did actually try to make out about Huxley. I always said, the reason I actually think the Rogger comment was so egregious was, I wanted to say to Rogger, who the fuck do you think Astralis are now, mate? Like, this isn't the old days with Device and fucking Dupree. Like, the squad you're in now, you should be happy if Huxley joins your team. Like now, he could actually turn it around. Like, yeah, maybe he wasn't good enough for like the G2 super team, but like for your team, he should be actually. That it can't just be that you're either really good or total shit. There has to be a fucking whole bunch of grades in between. And in this case, even if I don't think he was the best, I even said on shows he was probably like the 4th or 5th best though. He's still pretty fucking good. So hence, couldn't he just be on the 4th or 5th best team? That, to me, that's the appropriate position. But I do feel like people either just, because you notice, the reason the Huxley one is perfect is the second he then does well in Astralis, people also go the other direction. It's like, right, well, in that case, he never had a single problem on G2 and it was everyone else like, it doesn't have to be one of the other guys. We can have like nuance to this discussion, but I agree. We will never know. It's why I actually think the closest we can come to using inference to analyze is only the in-game leader. And even then, I always say we still don't really know what they call in half the rounds. Coach! I don't even think we're seeing 90% of what they do. I think everyone who has really strong opinions, look, you can have them as a fun opinion, like we're saying. But the idea that could influence the team, I hope teams aren't even listening to that. I hope that's not even in your mind. Have the balls to actually pick the player you think's going to succeed. And I agree, by the way, to tie it all together, if we just actually fire bad GMs after a couple of years, the whole system will take care of itself, mate. Because I do think part of it now is, as a GM, you could essentially, by the way, make a move for fan popularity. And if it doesn't fail, you don't get fired. You fire that player again and get another player. That's bad. I do think that should have accountability.
Crazy. Yeah, it's crazy. I really think that if I could push one narrative myself, it would be to actually like, okay, this GM has had 6 seasons of building a new roster every season. Maybe it's time to direct our focus elsewhere outside of the team. Yeah. But yeah, as you said, it's always impossible to know also the team dynamics. You know, putting one player in this team, it might not work because of the team dynamics, the players he is supposed to call around and lead. But put him in an Astralis as an example, maybe he is exactly what they're looking for because he had the experience from playing with Nico and MongoLZ and Hunter. You know, those are big names. And it sounded like when he came to Astralis, they were like, this guy, he's exactly what we needed. That was like what was coming out, what I was reading. And it's tragic that we saw, like you said, it only took us one tournament to like, Huxley, he's actually quite good, right?
Exactly.
It's crazy. Right,
Maui, what is your ugly point?
Mine is that it's kind of a weird. It has to be in the ugly category because it's kind of a positive, but it's also a backhanded positive. Is that to me the FURIA signings actually worked. They made it to the top 4 of Astana in their debut opener with MongolZ and Yekindar. I still am not sure if I really fully believe Yakindar's back in any way. I don't think he's ever going to be the player that we saw back in 2020, 2021 necessarily, but he is at least contributing more value to the team. But MongolZ is already, in a joke way, for like, the headline would be like, MongolZ is the best Brazilian opper right now. It's like, obviously he's not Brazilian, but it's just that for being on a Brazilian primary team, he's the best opper, and it's taken one event to really realize this. He's better. He already looks better than NQZ. I don't really think I even need to go down the list any further. I honestly don't. I don't. I mean, he's better than Fallen, and Henny's been so inactive that he's taken himself out of the running. for being the best. So yeah, I think the ugly point here is that, for a team, for an organization that for such a long time was trying to make it work with Brazilian talent, there was obviously that 2 month, no, it was more like 5 months with Junior or so. Like it was like half a season, if even that. It was like half a year. That was like the only time they've tried to integrate anybody that wasn't Brazilian into the roster. They went through Safe. Obviously Fallen had it, and they just kind of kept it on him for a while. For them to already find more success with picking up, well, I guess Latvia is like, it's not Eastern. I don't know if you would consider it Eastern European, but either way, like an Eastern European Asian opera in Molodoi, and then Yekindar, for it to already look better than what they've been toiling with for quite some time. I just find that the position that Brazilian CS has found itself in, which we've talked about ad nauseum on the show in the past, is just like, yeah, it's that bad that they couldn't just get somebody from their own region, which is twofold because of the buyouts. And second is that there's just not the upper talent necessary to play at a tier 1 level. I just find all of that sort of ugly, even though the bright side of this is that FURIA are probably in a better position than they've been in for at least 5 months.
Any thoughts on FURIA, Walle?
FURIA is one of those teams, right, who are always struggling at that famous line, not really surpassing where they need to be. They're always just around that mark. And I'm not hyped about the move, about them going international, but I think that's something that I have always believed. International teams are gonna be the way for the top teams for sure. But then if you're looking outside of the top teams, I think national teams make sense, and also FURIA, commercial reasons, should have stayed Brazilian. In the same way that I think that NIP should have stayed Swedish, because they're a Swedish brand, they're a Brazilian brand.
Okay.
I think that the legacy and the story is worth more than trying to go international. And I heard that the buyouts are high in Brazil. That's a big part of the problem. But I'm not as into the meta and watching the games, but I don't think that it's gonna be a success for FURIA. I think that maybe they're gonna have a honeymoon period, and they're gonna have maybe a couple of similar runs, but in the end, I think it's not gonna be better than what we saw before from a Brazilian lineup, and I think that's gonna be time wasted, and maybe fans that are not happy with choices that are being made. I don't know how sponsors feel about that, but I would love to see a player like Yekindar get a chance in an international team. And like I said, I love a good redemption arc from the Liquid days. I would love to see him in a team that makes sense from his region or international. But I don't think that FURIA. It's going to be interesting to follow this, because Maui thinks that maybe this is going to be better. I think it's going to be, maybe some honeymoon phase, but then we're going to be at the exact same place that they were before, struggling in the same type of level that they were at. And I would maybe question more like philosophy in the FURIA teams. Philosophy, tactics, stuff like this, composition of the team. I love a guy like Fallen, but maybe it's time to try to play less Brazilian CS and more modern CS, because they always had their own way of playing. And that takes you to this level, but then maybe you have to, to take the next step, you have to start playing, look at what the top teams are doing and start playing like they are. So before going international, I would have considered rethinking the full philosophy of the team and the approach to their strat book, and maybe the in-game leader as well. I would definitely take a look at that first before going international. I think it can be a big mistake. I hope I'm wrong.
Put it this way, I would say this. In the short term, I know what Maui means. It looked better than expected, and it was better than the previous version of FURIA. My problem is I sort of agree with Walle. I don't really know what the point of the move is. Here's why. Because in my opinion, you have two directions you can head in if you are FURIA. Either we have an amazing Brazilian team, such that we're Brazilian and everyone's Brazilian. Hey, all Brazilian fans, come watch us, we're Brazilian. Or you try and just be the best team in the world. This team doesn't accomplish either of those. You're not even close to the best team in the world, and actually you're not an all-Brazilian team now. You've lost that value. So to me, the part that sucks is it does feel like just a waste. Like, the only way this can work, in my opinion, and quite frankly, this hasn't been messaged, I think, with how they've talked about this roster, is if the idea was this is the plan to just be international forever, and this is just a stepping stone to a better roster. So we're going to start out with this Kazakhstani player people don't know, and Nikindar who no one wants. Okay, but don't worry, if it works, then we'll add in maybe we get Brokey, and then we get if we're going to do that, we're going to work piece by piece and move up and be just the best international team. I'd be with you. I just don't believe that personally. I think this is actually a cynical sort of min-max just to be relevant again. I think they were just sick of going to tournaments and coming last place and sort of just being an also run. And the joke was, for real, they were the team that was almost losing to Imperial Valkyries, the female team, and not getting through planes and stuff, and that was way below their level. But I'm with you. Here's the difference. If everyone remembers that major where FURIA, it was the Rio major in Brazil, they were in the semi-finals and they looked like they could have even won the tournament. This lineup won't be at that level. In fact, I don't think any lineup they've had ever since has come close to that. That was the peak. That was where they looked like they really were the fourth or fifth best team in the world, and if they fucked around, maybe they could win the tournament. My problem is it's been so many years since then, and quite frankly, I don't know how you get back there. So I understand some of this is a response to problems in the Brazilian scene. Maybe they have a bigger ecosystem problem needs to be fixed before this can work out. But I do think it's a bit of a bummer. I'm with you. I think it's a problem for sure.
I think to me, it feels like exactly what NIP did for, was it maybe 2 or 3 years?
Yeah.
That they, like you said, I would accept that you go international to get the best possible lineup you can. You're going to compete for top 5, and that's what I said about NIP too. I would accept that you go out and get a top 10 player. If you're going to throw away the Swedish lineup, that I can get on board with. But going out and getting, similar level players that aren't going to change where you're at, I think that's a waste of story and legacy, and it's going to start worrying. I mean, fans especially are going to get frustrated because in the end as well, the fans are also going to dictate whether you are relevant or not. So I think organizations should be more careful and take better care of their fan bases than what some of them are doing, because with NIP, you saw they've lost a ton of their original fans.
Oh, of course.
Just in the past 4 years, and it's been such a slippery slope, and it's gone so fast, and I don't really see the difference between that and what this is. But I hope I'm proven wrong, that MongolZ is that guy, Fallen is that guy for the IGL rifle, and then that Nikindar is gonna but maybe it's like you said, Thorin, that if this would be a springboard to the next step, this is where they start testing the waters and start testing some players they've had their eyes on. I think that makes sense for sure.
Right, the last point of the show And I've actually tailored this specifically for you, Walle. It's actually a question a bit about your career, but I thought you could relate in a very unique way to this situation. So one of the storylines coming into this major, anyone who followed CS will know this, is, well, think about it, right? Vitality is the number one team. Everyone expects them to win the major. I've already said that, right? So if you think about people like Zemu, I can tell you if he wins the major, a lot of fans and analysts will say that makes him the greatest of all time. You know, that's the final thing. And if people don't know, I can tell you that wasn't how we thought about things in CS 1.6. In CS 1.6, how great you were as a player was more like sports. It's just your general body of work. Like, how did you play in every match? Like, I'll give you the obvious example. If I said to someone, like, obviously present company included, that the best AWPer in 1.6 was Kogu, the Brazilian, no fan would go, but he only won the one major. They'd go, oh, let's debate it. Like, yeah, he was really good, but Valle was good, and Fraud was good, and Marklov was good. And you'd have a real debate about how they played, right? So first of all, I think Z was an example already, because he won his, like, easy major, people think, of the Blast one. But the biggest one that everyone always brings up is obviously Nico, right? If people don't know, obviously Nico's never won the major. If you don't know, Valle never won the major. He had a lot himself in second places and times where he thought it was going to happen. So I wanted to ask you, because I thought you could uniquely speak to this. I put it as ugly, because on the one hand, Valle, on some level, if we're deciding the absolute best, yeah, winning the major can be important. It's the biggest tournament, right? But I also think it's ugly that I do feel like Nico's a great example. I feel like people do judge players very harshly if they don't win the major. Like, I often tell people, mate, there's a lot of players who won the major. I think Nico's way better than and had a much better career than, even if, yes, he never got to lift that trophy up. So as someone who was in that position, this is obviously something people put to you when you had your career. What do you think about this pressure that you have to win the major? What do you think?
I don't think that it's gonna impact a career like Nico's. I totally get your point, and you are very right about the fact that I was also in that spot many times where I had the trophy within grasp, but then managed to lose the final in maybe to an underdog team sometimes where we were the favorites. And I think that mostly it affected myself.
Oh, okay.
And the way that I view my own career and how I value it, it kind of becomes that thing that eludes you. But I know that, you know, among peers and among community, it didn't really impact my legacy or what people thought of me. And I think that the same goes for Nico and some other players like him too, that no matter if you win the major or not, he's still accomplished so much. And I do believe that it's not going to come down to that one trophy in your cabinet, whether you are in the discussion for one of the greatest of all time. I think that for me, that's a mixture of many different things. If you're in that category, it's not only about the major trophy or the MVPs. There's a lot to it. Like you said, how they played during their whole career is something that's gonna impact what I would think about how I view a player. So I wouldn't, to be honest, I wouldn't now in hindsight rank the major as deciding for his career, and not for mine either. There are always gonna be, if you have a career long enough, hopefully you're gonna get the trophies that you need. And he has plenty of chances left, right? I think that for myself, I wasted a few years. I could have had more chances, to be honest, on my trophies. And I hope that, and I think that Nico or someone similar to him is gonna take his chances better than I did, for sure.
What has unfortunately happened in almost all major sports discourses is that there's a lot of people now that push numbers before they push their own eye tests.
Yeah.
And you'd actually think that as AI takes a greater hold on society, that people would try to develop the skill sets that differentiate themselves from a machine.
Sure.
But people with pretty much like zero backbone, no memorable takes, and just want to just always be objectively correct, they see trophies as the most quantifiable expression of winningness. And so then they boil down a person's achievements to their trophies, but then they immediately short circuit when you ask them, oh, was Dupree then the GOAT? They can't actually fathom that their simple metric that they use to try to express ZywOo greater than simple cannot then be further brought to, well, 5 greater than 2, right? Yes. It's just such it's a moot point by people who haven't actually laid out their rubric of what makes somebody great. And greatness can have a subjective rubric. It's okay. But if you don't actually ever push that forward in a discussion, then I have very little reason to pay attention to anything that you're saying, because if you are a lot of people in this space actually do this. They have very conflicting they have, because they haven't laid these principles out for themselves. Yes. They actually then end up conflicting with themselves. They end up being contradictory, and unfortunately, I've noticed that fans I feel like actually fans have done a weirdly decent job at this before with me, where I try to like write things down. I try to lay out my ideas. I try to like make sure I kind of know what my stance is on something, to a point where I don't contradict myself. But I think that sometimes people in this space actually lose credibility because they contradict themselves. And I don't even think that they necessarily know that they've contradicted themselves all the time. So I think it's something that everybody should be a lot more conscious of, or else they run the risk of just losing faith from the fans, because what they said 3 weeks ago is different than what they're saying this week, as they haven't outlined this criteria. That's why, that's my rant on this.
I think that one thing that I would bring to the table when talking about those type of players, because there are plenty of examples too from the old days, is how much has the player done for the game in terms of impact and in terms of inspiration, and just bringing more excitement to the game. That's a variable for me that,
sure,
in this type of conversation, when it comes to like the Brazilian opera Kogu, he brought a lot to the game that wasn't seen
for sure
in the trophies too. And he brought fair to his opponents, tier 1 teams.
Yeah.
This stuff like this.
You could also argue, by the way, that people like the Fallens of the world might not exist without Kogu. Part of their career tags onto his, yeah.
For sure. And that's also why I think it's hard to ignore someone like Simple, when you can see what type of impact he has on the ecosystem, on the supporters, on the viewership. That's the type of impact that's hard to quantify, and to measure as well, where for me, that would be one big part of why someone has brought a lot to the game, or actually has earned their place in the esports, history books. That's also how much they impacted outside of the trophies too, for other people, and I think someone like Simple is a very good example of that. And we have some old school players too who never got the trophies but had a huge impact. And then on the other hand, we have the opposite too. Heaton is a friend of mine. He had a huge impact, but his career was pretty short, to be honest.
Yeah,
His
true.
like peak career. I had a longer career than him. So it's for me, it's more of a combination of things that you can't really count only the trophies and MVPs, and that's also why, as per your point, Thorin, I think that Nico should not be worried about having the major be deciding for his career. I think he accomplished everything and more that could be asked. And everyone, this also proves the impact of outside of trophies, that everyone wants him to win it.
Yeah, of course.
That's the type of impact that a great player in a game is going to have on the fan base, on the supporters, on the talents, and all of this. All of us wants to win it for Nico. I felt myself like cheering for Nico,
Right.
just because I want it so badly for him. And he, does he need it? I don't know.